Welcome to the Exceptionally Irresistible Show, featuring conversations with people who have demonstrated exceptional success in their lives and who have some irresistible qualities worth learning from. Come learn how others have created an exceptionally irresistible life. You too can live an extraordinary life, both personally and professionally. So sit back, relax, grab your favorite beverage, and enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to another awesome episode of the Exceptionally Irresistible Show. We are so excited, and we are really highlighting these incredible people. So, we truly hope that you are gaining so much from these incredible stories, as much as I'll be a little bit selfish here. I'm gaining from them. So, it's incredible. These people are just remarkable. And today, we have another remarkable guest. It is a marketing and branding expert. I know what you're thinking. Those marketing. No. This is something completely you've never heard this, you've never seen this before. Marketing is all about, and branding is all about you, the actual person. It's bringing your authentic voice out. And this expert talks only about that. She could talk about that till she's blue and green and yellow in the face. I don't care what it is, but she is a person who really demonstrates it in her real life. And that's why she's a guest on the Exceptionally Irresistible Show. She is just so exceptional, so irresistible, and she's going to teach you, the audience, how to do that as well. So we will talk about how to reach her afterwards, but for now, I'm excited to introduce Tracy.
Hey, Yermi, excited to be here.
Hey. So, Tracy, your message is all about authenticity. You're standing on a rooftop somewhere, you're screaming this out. What are you hoping that people will get out of it?
Well, there's kind of two parts to this. So one is the benefit of being yourself and how that allows you to stand out in the crowd, but also feel personally fulfilled at the same time. But equally, I think a lot of times when people talk about authenticity, and people specifically are quote unquote selling authenticity, they make it sound really simple. Just be yourself, right? Just be yourself.
Sure.
The problem is it's not actually that simple. So it's important to understand what are the things that stop us from being ourselves before we can actually get to the place where we can give ourselves the permission to be ourselves. And every single person has different limiting factors that have been caused by how they were raised, their community, their culture, society as a whole, right? Like layers and layers of things that have convinced us that we shouldn't be ourselves. So while it is one of the most rewarding things, at least from my own perspective, that I can say I have achieved in my life, it is not the easiest thing to do. And it is by no means a light switch that you just turn on one day and are like, okay, now I'm authentic. So yeah, the real talk on authenticity, but also the benefit of it.
I love it. I love it. I love everything about it. And that's why we're really going to hone in on this one, on this show. But two things stood out to me when you were talking about. Number one, authenticity is harder than it appears. Okay, so objects are closer than they appear. Well, not really when it comes to authenticity. But and another piece that really stood out to me is that I'm selling authenticity. Like there was really, I feel like those were very intentional words that you used there. But before we get to that, let's talk a little bit more about authenticity and like in your definition when you're saying authentic, because now today that's a buzzword these days, like I'm hearing it everywhere.
Totally a buzzword. And if you look it up in the dictionary, there's 5 different definitions of it. One which I like kind of agree with, but then 4 that I absolutely don't agree with at all. So my definition of authenticity is doing or saying what you would do or say when you would do or say it. So something that's really interesting about that definition is it's 100% about you. And this is not about me deciding that you are authentic. Nope. This isn't an external how people see you thing. This is an internal how you see yourself thing.
Mm-hmm.
And only you can decide what you would do. Only you can decide when you would say that thing, right? Sometimes we might say things in one scenario, but not in another scenario. That's fine. Authenticity isn't that we always have to say the same thing all the time. It's that we have that inner power to be able to decide for ourselves, is this something I want to say right now? And then create the space for us to actually say or do those things.
And you know, Tracy, this is something that you and I have discussed multiple times. So you know how passionate I am about this definition and how passionate I am about this discussion. And I want to share with you, like, at first I was doing all this public speaking. I had episode 1 a couple of years ago. I took a break of that for about a year. And primarily one of the main reasons was to find my authentic voice. I felt I was regurgitating. I felt that I was, and here's really where my biggest struggle and where I was focused on in the past year was I was so up in my head about, do they like me? Do they like my presentation? Do they like what I'm saying? Do they like, And the moment I discovered saying, you know what, it's not about whether they like me or not. It's whether I have a message to share, whether I have something of value and of impact to share. And I'm going to say it. And I'm going to be I'm going to just be real about it. I'm just going to say it as is. And there's a 50-50. 50% they like me, 50% they don't. And those who like me, great,
And
But
it might even be, to be fair, it might even be a smaller percentage that like you.
I mean,
right?
yeah,
So if we look at the world as a whole and think about the 8 billion people that exist on Earth, there are 0 people who are liked by 8 billion people. It's not a thing. Your people and people in general are 2 different things. And so this is really an activity in one, liking yourself enough to say that, like, I know what I'm talking about here. I'm going to share my perspective. My perspective is helpful or very minimally empowering for other people, to give them another option to think about. And if someone doesn't like it, I don't really care, right? And it's not about, like, it's not that I'm out there saying hurtful, mean things to people and I don't really care if people care about no. But this is, so most people, now I'll say the majority of humans on Earth are good people. We are helpful people. We are caring people. We want to help people. And so it's about, like, finding your voice, how you help people, but then owning that from the perspective being like, this is how I help people. And if there's people who don't want that kind of help, that's fine. If there's people who don't want help in my way I do it, that's fine. But this is my way I help people.
Yeah. And just to go back a quick second to why I was sharing that and tying it somehow to the selling something. It's like, you're never selling yourself. You're never, like, I don't see it in that kind of way. It's just you're living, you're being you. There's something you are super passionate about. And if you are truly, authentically, right, using that word very loosely, you're just really, really connected with that message that you have to offer. As you said, some will like it, some won't, some it works for them, some it doesn't, it doesn't matter. But really like, I love what I do. And I think it's very, very, like, anybody who knows me and anybody who sees me and anybody who whatever sees how much I love what I do, and I do it with love. And I don't consider myself selling this. I just come over to, a client, a prospect, and I truly love seeing them succeed in this method that I follow, that I use for myself. And that's all I got. That's literally all I have.
And so this is an interesting comparison, because this I know about you, and I feel like I'm the same, right? I'm not out here trying to convince anybody to buy authenticity. I work with people who want to be more authentic, right? Like, that's it. That's the game. You want, that's the game I play. I'm not interested in, like, if you were going to go to, like, a university. So most people who have played sports have played it before university, if they're going to go play university sports, right? You don't go to the basketball court and try and convince someone to go play football. right? You don't. They've picked a sport by that time, and they're probably not playing multiple sports because they're worried about getting injured, right? They've decided this is my game, and I'm going to play it. And we can equally decide this is my game. I'm going to play it. Not that we're gaming people, but I like to use sports references.
Sure.
The difference is that when it comes to marketing and people who are selling marketing services, a lot of them want to actually sell you authenticity. So there was a gentleman I used to follow on LinkedIn, and honestly, I can't even remember his name now because I unfollowed him so long ago, but he did this post about how he sells authenticity, but he is not authentic. Right? Like, I lie to people all the time in my social media posts. And I was like, okay, this is not something I believe in. So I'm going to unfollow you. I do not want to be connected to the people you're connected to. This is not who no, this isn't a fake it till you make it kind of conversation. This is not a thing where I can tell you, I can create a new LinkedIn banner for you. And then all of a sudden you'll be authentic on LinkedIn. But no, sorry, that's not how it works.
Right.
And when my journey originated in personal branding, and this happens a lot in the personal branding conversation, is people want to make it easy. So then they convince you that it's as easy as changing your tagline, getting a new set of headshots done, and changing your banner, right? And like, no, because none of those things. I actually have a Post-it note on my computer that says this: if you just change your LinkedIn profile, have you changed? No, and you specifically haven't changed if someone else changed your LinkedIn profile for you and now said you have a personal brand, right? No, you might have a brand. It's not personal, which means it's not authentic.
Right.
The authenticity lives in you, and all of us have places, people, experiences where we have been able to be our authentic selves. Some of us maybe have more or less of them in a business scenario because it hasn't really been a intention for a lot of people when it comes to career planning. But just like I remember this. I had a friend in high school who had a fire pit in her backyard, and we have all these pictures of the group of us in high school, and we have like side ponytails, although just to confirm, this was not in the 80s, but we had decided that those were cool and we should all have side ponies, and we had so much fun. There's like silly pictures. In that moment, we were all being our authentic selves, and it was fun and memorable. And it's not, none of us have this in like 100% of our lives and 100% of the spaces we go, right? Like, it's not a thing. Just not like you can walk into every grocery store or you can walk into every networking space and feel like you can be totally yourself. And again, there's lots of different layers that play into that. But there are places where all of us have felt that. And so this is where we can start to gather the information and say, okay, what was it about those people? Okay, I was like really confident those people weren't going to judge me, so I just could be myself. Or maybe I'm like, oh, I don't care if they're going to judge me because I'm the silly friend, right? That's my role in my group of friends, right? The goofy one. And so that's fine, but I'm not the goofy one in all areas, right? So like, I'm not necessarily showing up that same way in all capacities. What's the difference between how you show up in your like spousal relationship, or how you show up as a parent, or how you show up in different work environments, different networking environments, different on the playground with your kids, right? Like, it's like we all carry around these different personas,
right?
But that doesn't actually make you inauthentic. Right? It may just mean like, well, I decide to not share my total political opinions with everybody everywhere.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
In certain scenarios, yeah, maybe I will. Like if I'm talking to my husband about it, totally, right? Sure. But like, I'm not going to go to the school playground and start talking about politics. Right? And that doesn't mean I'm not inauthentic. It means that I've intentionally chosen not to have that conversation in that place.
Sure. Makes sense.
So that's me being me and me making my own decision. And I think that is the complexity that comes into play with authenticity. Is it's not about all or nothing. Right. It's about you owning your filter and deciding like, I choose this.
And that's it. And that's what I was about to highlight was it's really a filter, because when you were saying, you're that goofy friend, and with your husband and with your child and with your other school mom friends and like all the other, different scenarios that you're in. I don't see you as Tracy, the Tracy that at least I know, is like a different person in each scenario. Because Tracy, who's showing up today, is still that fun. It's still that bubbly, still that energetic. Like there's that common thread that still is woven there. I'm sure you show up this fun everywhere you go.
But
You know,
like my
but
son
at the
wouldn't
same
say
time,
I'm this fun when I'm making him eat his peas right, at dinner. You're so mean, mom. And like I was joking with him this morning because I'm like, if you're ever a dad, you're gonna have to be the one that makes your kid eat the peas, and I'm gonna get to be the grandma that just gives them donuts, and you're gonna be like, mom.
and then you're mean again.
My
There
son
you
is
go.
only
You
5,
never win.
by the way, for people who don't know me. But like the point is that
Yeah.
you make the decision,
Sure.
right? You're not filtering yourself out because you think someone else is expecting you to do that.
Right.
And that's the difference. It's like I always use the example of like clothing on the outside of us. Easier to see than what's going on the inside of us.
Sure.
So if you met me at a black tie gala, I would look different than if you met me playing with my son on the playground. Right?
Sure.
I'd be wearing different clothes. I might be wearing a hat, maybe glasses versus contacts, curly hair, right? Like I would look different, but I would be the same, right? I would be the same. And so the real authenticity is in about giving yourself permission to look different in different spaces. If you're hosting an event, maybe there is a hosting capacity you create for yourself versus if you're just participating, right? But that doesn't mean you're not being yourself. It's just there's a certain version of yourself that is most relevant in that scenario. So that's the you show.
Yeah, no, I love it. And you started touching upon it just a second ago, that there was something that kind of like triggered in your head and said, "Oh, I think authenticity is the way to go." What was that journey like for you? How did you what did you wake up one morning and said, "Hi, I'm Tracy, the authentic person"? How did that work
No,
out for you?
that didn't happen. What did happen was that I was randomly dusting shelves and thinking to myself, I think I'm being my authentic self about 5% of the time.
Wow.
So this is and so also I want to just, when it comes to the word authenticity, because a lot of you might prefer the word genuine or real or what have you, and that's fine, totally do you. My brain said the word authenticity in my head, right? That's the word it chose. So that's the word I chose. It wasn't dictated to me by someone else. It was something that internally manifested, which is why I run with it, which is also something I encourage other people to do. Don't just choose the word authenticity if it feels to you. Don't, right? Like, I have a really great friend who hates the word authenticity but talks about resonance, right? And how things resonate with you or don't resonate with you. And to me that's the same thing, but it's picking your version of the word that makes the most sense for you. Anyway, so I was dusting these shelves and then thinking these thoughts, and then all of a sudden being like, what is up with that? Right? Like, I think I'm pretty good, right? Like, I'm pretty smart. I'm really helpful, super supportive. Like, I'm the friend who drives jerry cans of gas to my other friends whose cars have run out of gas while they're driving, which is still a thing I will never understand. But like, I do, like, I'm good at sports. Right? Like, I'm like, why am I not being me? And at that time I had a whole bunch of things that were dictating that experience to me. So my relationship with my family was dictating that, my like romantic relationship at the time was dictating that, my work environment was dictating that. And so there were a lot of layers, and honestly, I'm on, I think, year 10 now of unpeeling that. And there's still layers of stuff that like come up, and this is the human experience. But I decided that day to intentionally pay attention to how authentic I was being. And that also doesn't mean that you're going to be authentic all the time. One, I don't believe in 100% 0 people in this entire world are authentic all the time. I'm not authentic all the time because sometimes I experience new scenarios and I try a thing and I'm like, oh, nope, that's not something I would do. And then you can start to break it down. So an example I always give is I teach a dance class. And there was one dance class that I was teaching, and for whatever reason, I have this grief journey that I have been on, and all of the songs in the playlist were just like triggering my grief, right? Sure. But I'm here to teach, so I stuck a smile on my face and I talked for the class because, quote unquote, that's what you do, right? But I got to the end of that class and I was like, okay, so that didn't feel good. Right? That felt like totally fakey the entire time. My intention is to continually move towards authenticity. Why did I do that? I actually think I have a class full of people who would totally support me if I like randomly started crying in the middle of a Fifi Dobson song, which seems like it shouldn't happen, but what's going to happen? Like, so why did I do that? What if I just like shared with them that like, hey, this is coming up for me right now. The movement is going to be helpful to help me move through it, but you may just see me like feeling emotional. And it might have created space for them to have a similar experience, which would have empowered people more. But this is the skill actually, is being able to break down when you experience yourself being inauthentic and don't blame yourself for being inauthentic, but you can explore like what created that.
Sure.
Like I've been in the dance community for, I don't even know, how old am I? I'm turning 40 this year. So like since I was 7, you guys can do the math, but that's the thing, right? You perform, you stick a smile on your face. That's what you do, right? And once these things have been programmed into you for 30 years, it takes a minute to unprogram them.
Sure.
But the skill is in identifying those moments where you are being inauthentic, not blaming yourself, and exploring, okay, what's causing that? Is that a thought I'm having? It usually is. And then moving through the process. I've done a lot of personal development as well. So not everyone has the tools to be able to move through that kind of self-discovery, but this is a self-discovery practice. Why am I like that? And instead of feeling guilty or blamey or shameful or any of those things, we just get curious. What's causing it?
I think you literally just answered the question that I was about to ask you just through what you were just sharing. And what's resonating with me is that you're reminding me now a quote that I would get from a grandfather that I never met, but something goes like the greatest lie you could say is the lie you give yourself, And what I'm hearing that, what you're saying, my question was going to be like, what is about this message that's so important to you? And what I'm hearing based on your share is that you're just being real in the moment where you're at. This was just your real raw emotion. And I was getting a picture when you were saying like, you're dancing and you're emotional and all that kind of stuff. And the picture that I'm getting is just that there's this, like, to me, dancing is almost like an act in a certain degree. Like it's a form of entertainment, but it creates this environment of like, because when I'm dancing, I get into the music. Like I'm really like, I go nuts. Okay. So, but I could see as you, the instructor, creating that environment where it's like people are all in, and whether they're doing it for exercise or they're doing it for entertainment, whatever they're doing it for, it's a different experience. I feel that realness is really, and I'm going to tie in my next question because it's all tied in. It's that, do you feel like we sort of started touching on that before, that not everybody's going to like your message, but do you feel that there's a certain kind of person or a certain type of person that this resonates more with? Are you finding that in your in your work and your stuff? Is there a certain type or a certain, I don't know.
So I'm going to like go on a little tangent, but I'm bringing it back to answer your question because my background is also marketing. I've worked in the marketing industry for 20 years. And one of the things that is very common conversation in marketing is ideal client, right?
Right.
Who are our ideal clients?
Yeah.
And most people are looking at people based on their demographics. So their gender, their age, their household income. Even if you're looking at some like behavioral indicators, like they like to dance, blah, blah, blah. We're looking at people from a like very surface level perspective. If we're talking about an iceberg, we're talking about the tippy tip of the iceberg, right? All the ooey gooey goodness about humans is inside and it's underneath of all of the demographics. So what I have found specifically is like authenticity is not something that is only relevant to like one gender, one age demographic, one culture, one whatever. There are specific types of people that are attracted to the idea. And so the way that I have deciphered this in the language I use is I call it the curious. People who are curious. Because if you are not curious by nature, your curiousness hasn't yet been ignited wherever you are in your journey, this is authenticity, like I said, is a self-discovery adventure. If you are not ready to be curious about yourself and not necessarily get to a defined point of outcome, then you're not ready for an authenticity journey. That's not what you're looking for. You might be looking for a financial achievement or a physical achievement or like what have you. But authenticity isn't that. It's an ongoing skill building activity. And so the important thing in this is that I don't actually decide. I don't decide if you're ready to be curious. I can create an environment and I can create curious questions. I always do this with curiosity. It's like my go-to. But like I can ask questions. And when people answer my question with a question, then I know that's the right type of person.
Interesting.
Right? Because everything I do, even from like, I have a community called Your Business Peeps, and like, which is just a free LinkedIn group. But even that, when people are going to go in, I have recommended people not to join that because they're looking for a specific thing. I'm looking for someone to give me a system to launch my podcast. Right? Okay. Which is not bad. That's not a bad or wrong thing to be looking for. That's just a like predefined, prepackaged thing. That's not what authenticity is. It's not predefined and prepackaged. It's exploratory. And so this is also important. This is why the messaging is important as well. Because if I go to market, like a lot of other personal branding coaches go to market and tell you in 2 weeks, you can have a personal brand on LinkedIn, then like one, that's just straight up a lie, right? But people want to buy it because what they want is the defined outcome of a personal brand on LinkedIn. But if you don't understand what a real personal brand is, then yeah, that might be what you're looking for, which is why I go to market with messaging about these types of things, what authenticity really is, how it's a journey, how like I know different things about myself now than I did 10 years ago, but I'm still on the journey of authenticity. And then you have new things that come up, like all of a sudden you're a parent and now you have a new part of your identity, which you didn't have before. And it makes you a different person. So now authenticity looks different on you. That's why that permission piece is so important, because these things are going to change. We're going to learn new things. We're going to achieve new things. We're going to lose things in our life, and that's going to change who we are. And if we don't have the practice of evolving, then we just stay stuck.
100%.
So
yeah, and then for the last minute that we got, you know, you sound like a person that is just, you're inspired by your own message and your own, you know, what it is that you're all about. And it's very inspiring to just like as a host, like this is inspiring for me. So thank you so much for this. But where are you drawing your inspiration from? Do you have like anything specific, or do you have like, where are you getting this energy from?
Okay, so here's my belief is that once you get clear on where your energy comes from, you actually it can be created from anything. Wow. So I share this often with people. Like I I have a problem with content. My problem with content is I have too much content. I could never possibly share it all. And even hear me coming into this show, you're like, I'm going to send you the recording. I'm like, I'm never going to use that. And not because it's bad, but because like I have too much other stuff.
Sure.
Because I have conversations with amazing people, and that almost always inspires me. There is something. My son today surprised me, and when I got out of the shower, he was hiding in my hamper, and I went to like put my dirty laundry in, and he was like, "Hello." It's like, oh, why? But that's like him thinking of ideas of how he can be himself. And the kids who are 5 are like a treasure trove of authenticity. Things like my husband always bugs me because I'll watch movies like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the classic claymation, right? And like, I'm like, this is a personal branding story. And he's like, only you would think of that, because that's me. That's me doing me. And I see things that are in alignment with my passion and the gaps that I see in society. And I believe in the power, and I see it everywhere. I see it in the kids on the playground who talk to me and not the other moms, because they know that I see them, right? I see you differently because you are unique. And it's like I had an aura. I have. It's everywhere. And once, I mean, I could see how that could feel a little bit overwhelming, but at the same time, it's about like being able to harness it and like letting go of things like that's not inspirational for me. A lot of my friends will be like, oh, walk in nature is like so inspirational for me. And that's great, right? But that doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me at all. I need to be into conversation, but I can be in conversation with anybody or listening to pretty much any narrative, and I hear undertones of branding. So that's when you know you're in your zone. I don't know how many people have read the book The Big Leap, but they have these like different zones, and there's a zone of excellence and there's a zone of genius. And a zone of excellence is things you have practiced a lot. I have a zone of excellence in shooting free throws. So I've shot a lot of free throws in my life. That's not a zone of genius. I wasn't innately good at shooting free throws. I built that skill. That's a zone of excellence. Zone of genius is like something, a way you just see the world. And when you can tap into that way you see the world and transform it into either a business or into a job as someone who's employed, right? This is also possible. This is not about everybody being an entrepreneur. It's about everybody finding their zone of genius and surrounding themselves with people who want them to be in their zone of genius and celebrate them for being that way.
And that's the best way to wrap this one up, because I don't know about you, but I'm inspired, and it's always inspiring to chat with you, Tracy. So thank you so much for, indulging us and for coming onto the show and for being here and being just so Tracy. This is what was so awesome about this show, about this episode. And I really, really appreciate you. And I'm sure everybody else watching or listening to this appreciates you as well. So Tracy, thank you so much. We'll see you all next week for another episode. That's it for this week's episode of the Exceptionally Irresistible Show. What has inspired you to take action in your life? Take action now. Take the first step, share it with a friend, or write it in a journal. Subscribe and share this episode, and remember, you too are exceptionally irresistible.